welcome back. Today we're talking about scenes from A Marriage episode 2, Poli, as if they named the episode after the man she's having an affair with. So there was a lot to enjoy about this episode. First, the pacing. There's nobody else on screen besides Jonathon and Mira, so it was very easy to focus on the two of them. And I do like the contrast between Jonathon and Mira. So this takes place 8 months after the abortion. And Mira has accepted that this marriage is over, and Jonathon is in complete and total denial. Like, he does not want to, he does not want to see her point. The lesson here is, like, communication is key. And it was such a peculiar episode because when you compare it to the last, like, they had such great communication skills. You know, they were really, like, talking everything out. So it seems like within that 8 months, they totally stopped talking. You know what I mean? They just totally, like, shut down on each other. And this is kind of the end result of it. So before I break it down, I don't know how you feel about these intros. Like, at first I didn't really enjoy them, this kind of breaking of the fourth wall. And I think it's just a gentle reminder that this is just a show. And after this episode, I do appreciate that introduction. So the episode starts off with Jonathon and Ava. And it seems like Mira is on a business trip and they're not expecting her for some time. And so Jonathon is home alone. He's kind of taking care of their daughter. And as we found out in the last episode, Mira is the breadwinner, right? Like, she's the one who goes out and, you know, makes most of the money. So even before Mira drops this bomb, there's a few red flags to note. So the first is that she comes home early. So Jonathon is downstairs. He's kind of minding his own business. And then he notices a knock on the door. And it's Mira home early from her business trip. And the minute she walks in, like, just even the way she hugged him, like, she doesn't want to touch him. She's just kind of like, hi, you know. And she comes in and she's tense and she wants wine. And he's trying to act normal, right? Like, he can see there's something wrong, but for some reason he doesn't want to acknowledge it. And they kind of beat around the bush, right? Like, they keep beating around the bush. So even before she comes home, we see that Jonathon is watching porn, which maybe suggests he's feeling a little bit lonely. I don't know what. Or that the intimacy between them hasn't been, you know, right in some time. And so she's tense. They're talking about renovations. So in the last episode, it seems like they kind of made a deal to renovate the attic, even though they weren't having a baby. And since then, there has been no progress. And it's not about the renovations, right? Like, it's just more about their failure to communicate. Like, they can't see eye to eye, right? So you see that Jonathon is sitting there being like, you know what, forget the renovations, like, I can move my stuff. Like, he's trying to, like, really make it about these renovations. And she's sitting there looking at him like, like, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Like, and even her mannerisms, right? Like, she's texting, she says, oh, Kate something, like, and even in the first episode, she was texting a lot. And I didn't know, like, I suspected she was texting a lover, but I didn't want to, like, jump to conclusions. But after what she just dropped, it was clear. So they're pretty much done beating around the bush, and Mira tells him why she came home early. And she's like, listen, I came home early to tell you that I'm leaving you. And not only am I leaving you, I'm leaving you for a 29-year-old named Poli. And the way she described this guy, like, Poli short for something else. Like, he sounded like a character out of Jersey Shore. Like, he didn't sound like a real person. He's also CEO of a startup that their company is acquiring, which is, you know, it's a startup, right? And people tend to overvalue potential, right? And he's literally just like a shiny, bright object. And the fact that he's 29 is significant. The fact that he's CEO of a startup is really significant. Like, Mira wants out. And for her, out means, like, finding the opposite of her husband, right? Like, she describes this Poli as somebody that he would hate, that's somebody that he would make fun of, that's someone that just basically is like the opposite of everything they have at the moment. And so her desperation is clear, right? Like, she's hoping the grass is greener. And not only that, like, there's this sense of urgency that doesn't really make sense, right? Like, not only does she want to be with this guy, love this guy, she has to be with him the next night, right? Like, she's flying off to go be with him, and they're going to be together for 3 months or more. And she kind of made these decisions without consulting him, but she's going to tell him now. As you're listening to Mira explain the situation, not only is she trying to, like, justify her actions, like, to herself and her husband, right? Like, there's so many moments where she checks herself, where she's like, I think, oh no, I am. Like, she's really trying to sound like 100% sure in her decisions. Like, she keeps going back and forth. And not only that, she's trying to convince her husband, like, listen, not only should you have seen it coming, you need to accept, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, she's really trying to make this seem like a natural end, like their relationship was always going to end. And the way she kind of frames the conversation is like there were all these signs, right? Like the fact that he was unable to see that she was miserable or upset is just another indication of why they have to part ways, right? So the way she's framing it, he doesn't know what to do with this information, right? And she's trying to piece the information together for him. And as Jonathon is kind of listening to her talk, like he's really trying to maintain self-control, right? And I think some part of him believes that he can talk his way out of it, but sadly that's not the case, right? We get to this bedroom scene and the intimacy is dead and gone, right? Like she's changing her clothes. She doesn't even want him to look at her. She has scars on her back, which we can assume where she got those scars from, but the whole time she's trying to normalize the situation, right? She's talking about like, where's my dry cleaning? Like it's all good if you didn't pick them up. And then she gets into like details, right? So it's very clear that she thought this through, talking about FaceTime, talking about when she'll come visit her daughter, to the point where she even tells him like, listen, I got you. Like, don't worry about it. Like, I'll pay for everything because, you know, she's the breadwinner and he's just like the poor academic. And the way she frames the conversation is basically by saying, listen, you're not really afraid of losing me. You're afraid of losing this house, your daughter, you know, everything we've built. But don't worry, I got you. Like, you don't have to be afraid. So you can just calm down and we can talk about my dry cleaning, right? And she's hoping that by kind of saying these things, like even the words she uses, right? Detachment, like, you know, separation. Like she doesn't say divorce, but he is not really allowing her to get away with this stuff. And the question he has is, okay, like let's just say you have to leave me. Why do you have to leave me right now? Like what did I do to deserve this? And this is where Mira snaps. And I do have to give Mira some credit here because she kind of says time and time again, like the cheating, it's about me. And the people, when somebody cheats on you, it's about the person cheating. It has nothing to do with your partner. So in that sense, she takes responsibility and she's kind of saying like, this has nothing to do with you. There's nothing you could have done to change the outcome, right? And she kind of is really stressing that point. Like, I am done with this. Like, you are not listening to me. Like, this is not something you can talk your way out of. This is not something you can rationalize as desperately as he tries. Like, I am done. And it's a bit like perplexing because by kind of shutting the conversation down and telling him like it's about me, she doesn't give him a chance, right? She refuses to kind of give him any chance to fix it, any chance to kind of redeem himself. And she time and time again like labels his feelings. Like I think we've all done that when we're very angry with someone. You're like, oh, this person will never forgive me. Oh, they probably think I'm pathetic. Oh, they probably, when, you know, in fact, they probably don't think that, right? So she's not only like labeling his feelings, but the way she's labeling them is like in a way that makes it impossible for her to stay, right? So as far as she's concerned, you're never gonna forgive me anyways, so I might as well go. You know, either way, I might as well just leave. They have this conversation about like feeling and passion, right? Like her logic is that I'm done with you because I have no passion. I have no pulse when I'm around you. I can't, like the idea of forever, like being with you forever is not something that she can live with. And his reaction is, okay, show me this guy. Like who's this guy that's so awesome and so great? And even the way they met, I mean, there's so many red flags that suggest like this isn't gonna work out. And they also kind of suggest that this isn't really about their marriage. Like whatever is going on with Mira, like it's going on with her, right? And he's just kind of an escape route. So apparently they met at a work party. He liked that she was an American that I guess didn't care what other people thought. She casually drops in the fact that they were doing cocaine, which is really interesting because in the interview from the first episode, she was saying how she used to, you know, she was like a celebrity, like a campus celebrity. She dated a rock star. So maybe she's getting some type of like thrill out of being with this guy. And, you know, they slept together and, you know, he's listening to all these details. But as you're listening to her describe this guy, right, like it seems like her affair with this poly guy affected their relationship in that she had more of a sex drive, right? So during this time, she was sleeping with this other guy. She was sleeping with her husband more. And the idea that, you know, being with somebody else actually makes you attracted to the person you're with is an interesting conversation to have. But all this to say, like, her purpose in describing her relationship to this Poli guy is to tell him, like, happiness, right? Like, with him I can be happy, with you I'm unhappy, and the reason I have to go right now is because if I don't go, I will never be happy. And the issue of happiness is really peculiar because first, it's a very abstract concept. Is marriage really, like, do you marry for happiness? Like, you can have that conversation, but you also have to ask yourself, like, if she's defining happiness as, like, the opposite of her husband and, like, everything that they have, you know what I mean? So it's like her idea of happiness is already questionable, you know? Like, I can respect if you're in a situation and, you know, it's just done. Like, you've done everything you can and it's done. But to kind of actively pursue somebody that is in direct contrast to everything that you have, you know, raises a lot of concerns. This issue of happiness had me thinking, like, okay, the reason you're leaving him isn't so much like you have to leave him right now. It's more like she wants to see if the grass is actually greener, right? Like, she has to start her exciting new life today, and she has to confirm, like, this is the right decision. And so she doesn't want to lose that momentum, right? She doesn't want to lose that kind of, like, speed. So it becomes more apparent, and Jonathon is seeing this because he's like, okay, if you have to be with him, that's fine. It's not going to change anything. Like, if this is really substantive, if this is really, like, not a midlife crisis, then, you know, it should be okay. But the fact that you're dumping the parenting responsibilities on me, the fact that you're leaving your child overnight, I mean, this is not rational, right? Like, this is not okay, because ultimately he's the one who has to deal with navigating the child through this trauma. He's the one who, you know, he even says that, like, have you thought about, like, the day-to-day of this? Like, you leave if you like, but you cannot leave like this. And her comeback is quite interesting because she's like, listen, the pain you're feeling is, like, the truth hurts, right? It has nothing to do with me being cruel, because that he throws that word around a lot, like, cruel. You're being very cruel. This is very cruel. Like, this isn't fair, right? Like, fine, leave me, but you can't leave me this way. And he's like, and she's just like, no, the truth hurts. There's no good time to tell you. And so they kind of exhaust themselves and they go to bed. And even as they're going to bed, like, Jonathon time and time again, like, not only tries to rationalize, but he tries to normalize the situation a lot. And the more he kind of normalizes it, like, kind of goes through their daily routine as normal, the more she has to get out of there, right? So they go to bed, you know, he's looking at her, he wants to cuddle her, and, you know, he's really trying to remind her, like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Like, you're not even really giving me a chance to fix it whatsoever. They kind of end the conversation and they wake up the next morning, and even the way they wake up, like, you think, okay, maybe they overreacted. Like, there is some hope on his part, and you can see it in his face, right? He's just like, okay, like, let's just go through our daily routine. But little does he know this is the last time they'll be going through this routine, right? Like, he passes her a towel, they're brushing their teeth, there's this tension, right? There's this kind of like, okay, are you really leaving, or are we going to calmly talk this out? And she's really leaving. And the way she leaves, right, she grabs her suitcase, she's stuffing things inside, and she's not calm. Like, that sense of I have to go is back. You know, it's like this tense energy, and he's just like, what is going on here? And the way he, like, tries to calmly pack her suitcase, right, is just another indication, like, you don't have to do this right now. And the more normal he acts, the more she pushes back, right? Like, there's a scene where he's kind of making her coffee, you know, he's like, do you want coffee? You know, is there anything you need? And she's just done, right? She can't wake up their daughter because she doesn't have it in her to tell her, like, what's going on. He's about to have an asthma attack at some point, and, you know, she wants to help him, but she stops herself. Like, that moment where, you know, again, she's trying to convince herself she's doing the right thing, right? She wants to help him, and then she's like, no. You know, she tries to pull herself back, right? I have a plan and I need to do this. And this last scene, like, all of Jonathon's, like, restraint, like, kind of goes away. Because up until this point, he's been very good at trying to calm everything and kind of normalize it, be like, listen, this is still your home. Like, are you sure you want to leave? But when she grabs the suitcase and heads out, like, she's practically running out the door. And he kind of hugs her one last time. And this was really sad because just before the scene, she kind of says, listen, because he's like, how do we fix this? And he's like, you can't, I'm not attracted to you. Like, how do you fix that? And attraction is such a weird thing, because at face value, it sounds really like a petty reason to leave somebody. But honestly, it's happened to me and it's happened to a lot of people where one minute you're very attracted to someone, the next day, it can happen overnight or, you know, over time where you're just like, how did I even touch you? How was I ever around you, you know? And she has that feeling when she's with him, right? Like she doesn't even want to touch him. She doesn't want to be near him, you know? And I as much as I wanted to judge her for that, like, it's hard because I've been there where you're with somebody for a long time and then you're like, you know what, actually, and it's like you can't even touch them. The idea of being with them is just so, like, you can't do it. Like, it gets to a point where you actually can't do it. So, you know, Mira, as much as we're gonna, you know, we can rip into her, a lot of her feelings, we've all been there, right? And so she leaves. She practically runs out the door. And his self-restraint is gone, right? Like he breaks at that point. And he calls Kate and Peter. And this conversation was interesting because during their fight, Mira mentions the fact that it was Kate that agreed that, you know, having an abortion to save a marriage is ridiculous and they should just leave the marriage. But correct me if I'm wrong, when Jonathon actually calls Peter and then gets Kate on the phone, I think she said something like, I tried to convince her, like basically maybe she tried to convince her to stay with her husband. Like that's the feeling, that's what Kate seemed to be saying over the phone. For what little time I could gather, like it was actually the opposite. And so Peter and Kate are just like both on the phone with him. And, you know, at this point, Jonathon is done. Like this is the first time we're seeing him really snap, and all the anger, all the frustration over the 8 months, I think it kind of built up. You know, he breaks the phone and he's done. You know, he totally like, he sees the end. He could not talk his way out of this. And he kind of realizes in that moment, like, her feelings are not temporary. Like, she's not coming back anytime soon. And it's truly over. And the sad part was their daughter was just kind of looking at him like, so, like, is anyone going to make me any breakfast? Like, what's going on here? So overall, I thought that was a very dramatic episode. There was a lot to unpack. There's a lot to project. I think it was a tricky episode because all my frustration was aimed at Mira. But when I kind of took a step back, I'm like, you know, some of the points that Mira was saying, again, like, if you've been in a relationship, some of those points hit, especially if you're the one leaving your partner, right? So Jonathon, I really felt for him, but at the same time, he was in denial. You know what I mean? He was trying really hard to kind of pretend like nothing was wrong. And in that sense, like, you know, it was kind of like a pressure cooker that was about to explode. And that's essentially what happened. And so you guys let me know what you think. And until next time.